Hi everyone, and we are live on YouTube and on Instagram, and I hope you had a wonderful day. And it's the first time since quite a while that we do these live streams again, and I'm really looking forward to it because the personal connection with you and the personal interaction with you is always very, very nice. And I see people are joining here on Instagram and on YouTube as well. So what we will do is that we will have an open Q&A session. So whatever question you have, you can write it in the comments. Exactly. Finally, again, here we are back again. So as I said, if you have any questions, just write them in the comments and I will answer them. And I will start with a short reflection of the week and maybe with some, news. So what's going on in my life recently. So first of all, let's do a short reflection of the week. So as I told you on Instagram, basically my new project started 2 weeks ago, and it's a kind of very cool topic. It's a new client for me. It's a new setting. It's a very nice environment I'm working in, and the topic is inventory this time. And it's basically a cash optimization program where we try to generate some cash for the company. And the best way to do that in most cases is to reduce the inventory, because this is cost neutral, and you don't have to save some kind of cost, but rather you just reduce the inventories to generate cash, and this cash you can use to grow your company or to have a kind of security buffer. And that's basically what we do. And we are in the very first phase of the project. So this means we have to conduct a lot of interviews, a lot of workshops. And, we use a typical consulting approach, which means that we first develop a hypothesis. Then we have all of the interviews to further detail the hypothesis and test the hypothesis. Then once we have the hypothesis, we do all of the analysis to kind of, make them more concrete and to really develop concrete measures. And after that, we will present our results and then prepare the rollout. So that's a very typical setup. We only have 10 weeks to do that. So it's quite ambitious. And I have a very, very cool team I'm working with. And yeah, that's basically my situation. But this also means, that I have to travel a lot again. So from actually from Sunday evening up until, today, Thursday, I am on the road at the client, and then we have to visit all the different locations. So it's quite exhausting, but nevertheless, I'm glad that I found the time here to do the live. If you have any questions, then just write them in the chat and I will go through them. And in the meanwhile, I will just go through some questions that I received recently. So, one of the questions that I received was the following. You mentioned consulting tools except of Excel and PowerPoint and being used in MBB firms. What tools? So in a question or in a question that I received in one of my Instagram Q&As was, what are the most important consulting hard skills? And I said the most important hard skills are, using PowerPoint and building presentations, then working with Excel and doing analysis, and then mastering consulting tools. And basically, what I mean with consulting tools is the following. So it highly depends on what kind of level you are. So the more advanced you get, the more you, the more difficult, or depending on your seniority, you have to use different consulting tools. And I always compare it. It's a consulting toolbox is like a toolbox of methods that you acquire for yourself, and then depending on the problem that you have, you can apply these methods and solve problems. And at the very beginning, I think this is very, very basic. At the very beginning, I would really focus on, doing good research. So, developing some methods to conduct research, because this will be one of the most important parts. Then also, interviewing techniques. This is also very important parts that I would consider to be a very important consulting tool, that you know how to conduct interviews, that you know how to do them, how to get the information out of people. And then, of course, I always include note taking as well, because if you sit in meetings, if you have to protocol meetings, then you have to know how to take good notes. And this is the starter package. And of course, sorry, I forgot the fourth basic consulting tool is the problem solving approach, basically the most important one. So those are the four tools that I would always recommend to learn at the beginning. So the problem solving approach, then conducting interviews, doing research, and taking notes. So this is really the foundation that you need to know, that you need to master at the beginning, because you will do that a lot. And after that, you can, bring that to the next level. So you can start, acquiring skills for example, how to conduct workshops. You can also learn different frameworks that you can use in consulting. You can learn about certain project types. And this is what I call consulting tools. Okay. So these are some methods that you can apply in your daily life as a consultant. And that typically helps you, to solve problems and to do your work more efficiently. Good. Then let's jump through some questions that I received here. Charlotte Falk asks, what does a typical day on the project look like? Well, in consulting, you don't have typical days. That's the thing. Every day is very different. So I can tell you a little bit what my week looked like. So I typically get up at 5:30 in the morning. Yes, that's quite early, but the reason for that is that I want to have my morning routine. And typically, this routine consists of some meditation. Then I do some reflection, visualization, and also a sports session with my personal trainer, actually. And I have done that by 6:30. Then between 6:30 and 7:30, I would say, I try to work on mastering consulting. And then I go to have breakfast, and then my day starts typically at 8 at the client. And I mean, I'm now a project manager, so my day looks different, than the day of other people probably on the project. But what I do is at 8 o'clock, I have a check-in with the project manager from the client. So we have half an hour to discuss the recent developments of the project. Then after that, at 8:30, I have a 30 minutes check-in with my team. So we discuss all the important things that we have to do during the day. And then up until, I would say, 12, lunchtime, I have typically some meetings, some calls. I, sometimes do some work. So this is what I do in the first 4 hours. Then around 12, I typically have lunch. I always try to have lunch with my team or with the client. So I really try to use those lunch breaks to build a network, especially with the client. So I try to, schedule those lunch breaks with different people. So every time I meet a new person that I think it's would be interesting to build a relationship with, then I typically immediately try to schedule a lunch break. Okay, and this really helps to get to know the organization. I would really recommend that if you are on a project, that you use these lunch breaks to network with the organization. And if you don't have your organization, the organization, if there's no one available, then of course you go also for lunch with your team. And it's also important to have lunch with your team. But since you typically have dinner with your team, I wouldn't, I would use the lunch times, to go out with the client, and then, use the dinner to network with your team. That's what I would do. So then, lunch is typically done, at 12:30. So you have a short lunch break. And then up until, I would say, 6 p.m., you have another bunch of meetings, calls, some time to work. Then around 6, you typically drive back to the hotel. Sometimes you stay at the client, depends on the setting. And then you have their dinner together. And then you use the time, I would say, up until 10 p.m. That is my average time where I try to drop the pen. So up until then, you typically have some more time to do some actual work, because then you typically don't have meetings and calls. So yeah, that's what the day looks like. And my personal day, when I get back to the hotel at 10, then I try to do some content up until 11. And if it's 11, 11:30, I try to go to bed, and then I get up at 5:30 again. So this is my day. So I try to get between 6 and 7 hours of sleep. Most of the time it's 6 hour. Yeah, so that's how it is at the moment. And then at the weekend I try to try to get some more sleep. actually. So that's my typical week. But as I said, there is no typical week in consulting. So it highly depends on, your situation, your seniority. But, this is like, a typical day for me. And if we take a look at the week, on Monday morning, you typically drive or fly to the client. And on Thursday evening, you come back. And Friday is typically office day. We do some administration, try to do some internal work, and weekends should be off normally in consulting. Good. The next question, if you have any questions, then just write them in the chat. Next question here is, how much hours per week do you work? Well, this depends. So I always say, it highly depends on your, as consultants, we have project-based work. And the thing with project-based work is that you have ups and downs. So there are phases where you don't have to work a lot. There are phases where you have to work a lot. Typically, you work a lot, right before any kind of important meetings like steering committees or something like that. Then it gets more intense. But there are also phases typically, right after the steering committee where, there is some more time to relax. So, it comes and goes in waves. It also depends like on the style of your project partner, the style of your project manager, how they want to manage the project. And also depends on the type of firm you're in. If you are in top strategy consulting, then you typically work a little bit more. If you are more like if you work more on the operational levels, there the workload is a little bit less. So for me personally, my pure consulting work at a project is around, I start at 8, I stop, I try to drop the pen around 10. So this means 14 hours a day. Then I have like 4 days up until Thursday, probably, where I have that. And then I have like, 8 hours on Friday, 10 to 8 hours on Friday. Yeah, so it highly depends. I would say it's something between 60 and 70 hours on average, what I work for, in my consulting job. But I have to be honest, on the weekend, I work for mastering consulting. So my personal week has, between 80 and 90 hours. But, my pure consulting work is like 60 to 70 hours. And the rest, like 10 to 20 hours is for mastering consulting. So that's my typical workload. But, I always say that, first of all, that's an above average workload, obviously. So that's quite a lot, but that's okay for me because I love to work, and I'm not the person, who needs that kind of, that large amount of free time on weekends. So for me, it's totally okay to work on Sunday on this channel, for example, or to prepare the next week. But I always say, if you want to have or want to focus more on your work-life balance, that's totally okay. In consulting, you also work, you also can work only 50 hours. That's totally possible. Probably not in the strategy sector, but, in the more operational consulting firms, and that's certainly possible. So my recommendation is always that you think about, how much time or how much hours do you want to work? And then, there are always opportunities to adjust your workload based on your own preferences. Good. The question from Something Blue is, how glamorous is consulting? Well, actually, I made a video about that. It's uploaded on YouTube, so check this out. And well, depends on how you define glamorous. So, most people say, okay, the traveling style is glamorous. And yes, that's kind of true, especially if you work in the strategy consulting sector. Then you fly business class or first class. Then you typically, sleep in, 5-star, let's say 4 stars hotels, sometimes 5 stars hotels. The thing is that large firms typically have contracts with the large hotel chains. So it's very, normal that you sleep in, the Marriotts, the Hiltons, the Hyatts, in those kind of hotels. So that's also very convenient. Typically, also, if you have team dinners or something like that, then you go to fancy restaurants. So also, if you have to get to the airport, there are limousine services. So yes, that is kind of glamorous. And yes, you have contact to the top management. But also, I have to say, some projects, like my project, which is at the moment more production related, then you just drive to the production sites, and those production sites typically are not that glamorous. And it's not like, that you only work in those cool cities like, New York, London, Paris, stuff like that. Very often, in most cases, the large companies, they don't have their headquarters in those cool cities. They have their headquarters, somewhere in nowhere, where it's, where they have to pay only little taxes. So that's the reason why, yes, it's kind of glamorous, but on the other hand, also, you travel a lot. It's very exhausting, and very often you are not at the coolest places. We have to be honest about that. But it's still, a lot of fun, and I still love the environment. And yes, some people would call it glamorous, but the reality is that you have both. You have those glamorous things that you have, like traveling, hotels, dinners, but also they're very inglamorous times, I would say, where you have to work a lot, where you work in office spaces at a client, that are not well equipped or something like that. So I think you have both worlds. Good. Then let's jump to a question on YouTube. Andre asks, I'm an experienced professional with consulting background from LEK from many years ago, but really love your content. Thank you. That's very nice to hear. Nice to hear. You're younger than me, but is super insightful, helps me remember the basics of consulting work. Thank you, Andre. That's very, very nice to read. And yeah, I'm happy to hear that. So, getting this kind of feedback, that's very, very kind. And I'm always happy to read that. Good. Then Metacall asks, talk about ERP project. What do you mean with ERP project? You mean like enterprise resource planning process project? So Metacall, if you can be more specific about that, then I'm happy to answer your question. Brinley is back. Nice to see you here. Where is the best place to expand your network if you don't have one? That's a good question. So if we talk about network, I mean, it always depends. I think the most important question, if you talk about networking, is that you ask yourself, okay, what kind of network do you want to have, and why do you want to have it? So just building a network to have a network is not a purpose. Okay, for example, you can say, I want to have a network to or expand my network to sell projects. Okay, or to improve client relationships, or to meet interesting people, or to meet new friends, or to meet people who have an expertise in, I don't know, chess or golf or whatsoever. So it really depends. So the first step is always to set a clear goal for your networking. And then you have to think about, where are these people hanging around? So for example, if I want to build a network to potential clients, and if I say, okay, my clients, those are people, probably CEOs of large corporates, probably not the biggest corporates, because my focus is more on mid-sized companies, but companies between 1 and, let's say, 5 to 10 billion euros in revenue. And then I have to think about, okay, where are these people hanging around? And then I have to go to those places. Okay, so for example, of course, if you are at the client side, then it's very easy, because then you can just meet them at a client side because they are hanging around them. But maybe they're also, in kind of golf clubs. Maybe they love to go to business networking events, or maybe they want to, are going to fancy restaurants or to the opera. I don't know. But you have to think about where these people are hanging around, and then go to these places and try to meet them. And then it's very important that you also have a purpose. Okay, so you have to bring them some value, because if you just say, hi, I'm Johannes and I want to meet you, they're most likely asking, okay, why should I spend my time with you? So you have to give them a reason. So what I like to do is, talk about things that, I know about, where I think, they might be interested in. So for example, I really like to, do a lot of sports. I'm really this kind of, self-optimizing person. And that's for me always a great, entry for discussion. So I always try to, talk a little bit about, how they think about that. And most people are interested in personal development. And that's, something I know a lot about. And that's, very often my kind of hook. Also, I know a lot about wine, so this could be a hook as well. Stuff like that. Okay, you have to try to find commonalities or things that are really interested in, and then you slowly have to start building a relationship. But this takes time. Okay, I see most people, I think, try to rush this networking thing, and then this is not sustainable. So this is would be my advice. Okay, so try to define who you want to meet, then think about, okay, where are these people aggregating, where are these people hanging around, then go to these places, and then try to build a relationship with them. And maybe another thing, this is both true in the offline and in the online world. Okay, so I just brought examples for the offline world, but of course you can also do that online. So most people are probably on LinkedIn. They like certain pages, so they're discussing with certain people. This is also a great opportunity to meet people. But I have to say, especially in the consulting world, it's much easier and it's much more valuable to know people personally than meeting them online on LinkedIn, for example. Good. Then, next question. I'm a business development associate at BCG. I mainly work on writing proposals. What are your tips to switch to the consulting track? Okay, I think the best tip is to just do great work, to give 110%, because people will notice. Okay, so no matter where you are, I think it's always the best advice to do more than anyone could expect of you, because if you follow this kind of advice, then you will certainly outperform everyone else, and then people will notice. Maybe it takes some time, but people will see that. And if you do a great job in writing proposals, you also will probably do a great job in doing projects. And as I said, it might take some time, but just stick to it. Put in the work, put in the hours, put in the effort, put in the heart, stay persistent, and then I'm sure that it will work. But also, besides that, you can try to build a network, try to find people who mentor you within the firm, try to reach out to HR, try to explore possibilities. Because, as I said, if you put in the work, if you do a great job, people will notice, and then also they will try to help you to, bring or to add value to the company. Okay, so that's what I would do. Good. Then I have time for one more last question. Then I have to go to bed because tomorrow, as I told you previously, I have to get up at 5:30 again. So let me check if we have another question. Okay, the question is, how do you know if the consulting traveling lifestyle is too much for you? Well, you just try. Just have to try it. Okay, and then you have to see if you like it. That's the advice that I can give. But the thing is, not every consulting project is a traveling project. So there are many projects. So I'm based in Munich, in Germany, but there are many projects, who are just around the Munich area, and then I don't have to travel. I can sleep every day in my bed. Or if you have M&A projects, for example, or more finance related projects, they're also very often you can work from home or from the office. So you don't have to travel at in every project. And also I have to say that, especially during Corona and COVID, due to all the lockdowns, traveling significantly has been reduced. Okay, so I travel now again, so 4 to 5 days a week, but many projects have 50-50, 1 week on 1 week off, or that they only drive to the client side for important meetings, stuff like that. This can happen as well. So, but I would recommend you, that you just try it and then you see if you like it. Good. So that being said, it was as always a pleasure and an honor for me to talk to you guys. So it was very, very nice. I hope to do these live sessions more frequently again. I think, Thursday evening is a very good time, because then I come back from the project. Then I also, have still enough energy to do the live sessions. So I try to stick to it every Thursday evening. And this would be, I think, a cool format if we do it that way. So if you have any feedback, if you have more questions, then just write me on Instagram, personally on YouTube. You can also send me messages or leave a comment. And I hope you had a great time. I hope this brought you value. And the recording will be on YouTube and on Instagram as well. And with that being said, have a wonderful evening. Hope to talk to you soon. Thank you, everyone. Goodbye.